Hi, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about the topic of life after go live. You have implemented, set up, configured your CluedIn implementation for your first use case, and now you're in post-implementation, where we need to start to think about the people and the process side a little bit more. How are we going to involve, subject matter experts, the lines of business in playing a role in the overall supply chain of data? So the content we're going to go through is almost an amalgamation of the last 10, 11 years of us working with our customers and putting together these playbooks essentially of what actions, what approaches lead to a higher success rate when it comes to engaging the business. If you're interested in actually seeing these playbooks in a higher level of detail, you can head over to documentation.cluedin.com. And there is the playbook section where you can see everything from, how do you make a decision on what MDM provider you want, all the way to how to start your project, all the way to what does it look like 120 days after you have gone live and you're in this operating model of in production. So let's dive in and take a look at the content itself. So, as I said, let's set the context. You have a use case in mind. You have essentially finished many parts of the configuration and setup of CluedIn, i.e. you've got data flowing into the system. It's mapped into different business domains. Maybe you have started just on one particular business domain. Great. You have set up matching emerging projects. You've set up automation to, flag issues, to enforce validation. You have set up survivorship logic. You maybe even have a few AI agents that are running the finding and suggesting changes to be made to standardize and fix your data. You may have set up some of the automatic enrichment services, Dun & Bradstreet, Moody's, Google Maps, Bing Maps, to be able to not only validate but enrich values of your important data. And now it's really about, hey, we need to, the rubber is just about to hit the road. We need to start to engage those in the lines of business that are the experts on this data. So let's put together a fictitious scenario. One that we are commonly working with our customers on is single view of customer. For you, it might be single view of member, single view of client, something like this. And so let's go through the best practices to kind of push you in the right direction of the highest level of success with the quickest time to value as well. And as you can probably imagine, a lot of it is around building this muscle, iterative, repetitive, recursive muscle around being able to engage the business in a way that doesn't scare them away. This idea of build it and they will come, you can probably imagine that's very hard to achieve, if not impossible to achieve in the MDM world. We have to bring people along with the journey, but also there's some really well-tested, battle-tested methods to be able to continuously involve the business in a way that doesn't bombard them with the extra work when everyone's already very busy. So how do we do this in a way that is scalable and maintainable as well? So I think there's three principles that I'd like to focus on, and we'll dive into each of these in a little bit more detail. So the first is, it covers many aspects. One is morale. One is, the time that we all have in the day to be able to help solve this problem as just not an IT and engineering project. MDM is something that spans outside of that into the larger parts of the business. And so the first topic is going to be, right, so how do you focus on these small, frequent wins, not these big bang moments? We've all had them before, and you've potentially even said it yourself in the past of, how's that project going? Good, we're about 40% of the way through. I've got a couple of weeks before it's finished. That's not what we want. What we want is, last week I fixed 1%, the week before it was 1%, and now I'm probably going to get another 2% in this week. You want small, frequent, but visible wins, not only for your team, but especially for your executive sponsors as well for these projects. So obviously, when it comes time for the next year and we want reinvestment for the program because it's going well, it's these executive sponsors that we want to make sure are kept in the loop throughout the project as for the small frequent wins. The second thing is this idea of build it versus build it and they will come. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in MDM projects. It doesn't happen in Power BI projects. It doesn't happen in AI projects. There's a lot of buy-in that needs to, continuous buy-in that needs to be done for the value of the project. But most importantly, what we've discovered is that you have to meet people where they are, in the channels that they're already working on, in the tools they're already working on. That's where they kind of, give their, their attention to in the day. Having to learn another system, it's not nice. And so how much can we actually push and federate the responsibility out into those channels in a way that doesn't feel like this big smack of work? So for example, before we dive into the details, you can imagine a matching and merging project that has found 100,000 clusters. It's just not realistic that you're going to hit the business with that and say, okay, go and make the decisions on what to do here. You're going to be met with an audience that says, I don't have time to do this. So there's a way that you can build the federation in, and you can take this more small but frequent win approach to solving these challenges. And the last thing I'd like to focus on is your agents, CluedIn, should actually be doing the majority of the work. The analysis, the planning, the actual suggested fixes, and an operational model with CluedIn is really about sitting back and being able to drive those decisions. The human in the loop factor of saying, great idea, great idea, great idea, bad idea, don't do that. Or let's tweak that a little bit. Or, yes, I love the proposed changes that you've got, but we're not going to do that now. That's that human in the loop model where we're not necessarily doing the work, finding the issues, building the matching projects. We're not necessarily doing the investigation ourselves on, are these 6 companies the same or not? We're using the AI agents to essentially do a lot of that work and surface up the findings with all the attribution and the explanations and lineage and provenance and everything that would make it so much easier for that end user in the line of business just to say, yeah, that looks great. Like yep, perfect. Thanks for doing the work. So let's dive in. I would argue this is a piece of advice you will hear from a lot of vendors. I would, however, say this. There's certain technology, and I would say the traditional approach to MDM doesn't actually lead itself to allow you to take this small win, frequent win approach. And so I'll give you a simple example. It's often great advice to say start small, and I would agree. Don't take many business domains on at the same time, and start with one like client, something that's important, something where you can actually attach some business value to it if you were to master and clean the data. Great start. Traditional MDM, unfortunately, would ask you to model this data up front and say, hey, what do you want a client to look like? And if you take this very kind of, start small and grow larger, often you are in this case where later on you realize that's not the model you should have built. In fact, you kind of get yourself into this spiral of remodeling every time there is a new use case. And because CluedIn has this zero upfront modeling approach, you're skipping this complexity. So CluedIn very much, first of all, is a technology that allows you to take these small frequent wins. It's not always the case in all of the technology out there. So let's just take a simple example. Fixing 2% of duplicates in a week beats fixing 60% sitting in a project that no one signed off on yet. I think we would all agree that as businesses, we would rather see small, frequent, reliable, consistent wins rather than every 6 weeks, I might see something, but it might also be delayed. This idea of chasing the bigger percentages to essentially block the easy wins that are already there and easier to push out into the business. This is a great example of small wins, but frequent. This idea of never lock the data until it's done. I've been doing this with our customers for the last 10, 11 years, and I can definitely tell you that the idea that data is done is just not really the case. Yes, I think there are cases where if you've got something like company data, legal entity data, getting to the point where all of your legal entities have their country, have their city, have their postcode, have their phone number, these are good wins. There is rarely a good reason for actually blocking that data if 80% of the values are there, or 90% of the data is in a good structure. So this don't lock it, get the data out there and have these frequent wins. The same thing with time boxing projects. So we often will ask our customers, if you can't do it within a day, just max it at a day. And there's just some rot that comes in if you've got these projects, cleaning projects that are hanging around for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's very rare that these things actually end up being processed at a later point. Rather, they often get discarded and we start again. So keep these kind of projects small. Good example, if you've got 1 million records to do matching and merging on, by the end of the day, if you fix 10,000 of those possible matches, call it a day and do deduplication next Tuesday and knock these kind of clusters off, or knock these standardization of data tasks off, and rather time box it so you don't have these big massive projects. One business domain at a time. It's all about context. As you context switch between business domains, you often lose this kind of, why did I do that? Why was I cleaning this again? So, focus small little projects, frequent wins. If you've got customer data, often you're wanting to do things like standardize the names to the legal entity names. If you can knock out 1,000 on a Friday afternoon, but you've got 1,000 left, get the 1,000 out there into production and come back to the next 1,000 the next week. Don't wait until the next week to continue it. So the other thing is you need to share these wins on a constant basis as well. And we find with our customers, we work on different channels. We've got our customer support channels for tickets and support tickets. We've got, of course, our communication channels that are everything from Slack to Jira to Azure DevOps to Teams to, you name it. It's so important that you keep these small wins and you echo that throughout the business. And it's just little things like at the end of the week, we got through 2% of our duplicates this week. That's great. Next week, we aim to get 2% more out as well. Now, these are, the funny thing is, these are not technical things that I'm taking you through now. These are more behavioral, people and process things that they're so important once you're in operating mode. Otherwise, you have to realize a lot of the things that we're fixing with MDM is this data debt that you have built up over years. Celebrate the wins. Small, frequent, but celebrate the wins. That's the key part here. Okay, so the next thing, this concept of build it and they will come, doesn't happen with MDM, doesn't happen with data quality, doesn't happen with data governance, doesn't happen with warehousing, lake houses, doesn't work with BI, doesn't even work with AI projects. So one of the things that CluedIn does to be able to help integrate is what we call federation. It's the don't come to us, we'll come to you. And the way we do this is through native integrations into things like Teams and Outlook, Slack, Excel, Power Apps, Power Automate, and just having alerts on all different types of channels. So this is typically where, these are some of the channels that, majority of us actually work on. We have an email client, we have a chat client, whether it could be Teams or Slack. We have, some familiar tools that we're used to, that we're more comfortable with, Excel and things like this. At the end of the day, we are working with data, and that is very much a common canvas user interface front door to be able to work with data. So making sure we integrate here is one of those pieces, and also not being against the idea of teams not logging into the MDM platform, to actually stay in the tools that they're already comfortable with as well. So one of the kind of, I guess, big changes when it comes to agentic data management, something different to a traditional approach to MDM, which is typically very, reactive. I have to, go and there's an alert, I have to go and fix it. I'll go into the MDM system, I'll set up some automation, I'll set up a rule, I'll have a cleaning project. This is very much, there's a more modern approach to this that is much more AI driven and what we call first responders on the scene. Agents that as soon as there is some churn in data, some change, some new records, they are the first to kick in. They are given specific tasks such as standardization, finding matches and mergers, building rules, enriching and filling in missing values, just to name a few. And so make sure that you have your agents running on a schedule. The agents can be set up to run once. That's great for testing, but once you've actually got them operational, you'll want to run them on a schedule or a trigger. And that trigger is either going to be there's some churn in a certain business domain, or it's going to be, hey, every 5 minutes, check if there is any new data for a particular business domain or a subsection of that data, and then go ahead and do your job again. And that could be find me data quality issues, make a suggestion on how to fix it, and surface or federate that out onto the channels where my subject matter experts are. Do it in a way that allows small little incremental changes to go through, but also if we need to make big decisions like here's 1,000 records that we need to change, we need to make sure that that federation task is done in a scalable way. No one wants 1,000 alerts on a Slack channel or a Teams channel, and those are going to be ignored. So we have many different agents out of the box that kind of help you set up this cycle of data comes in, do your tasks. If there's anything wrong, suggest it on the channels that people are already working on. Your job as human in the loop is more to be responsible for choosing what you would like the outcome to be, whether that's to create brand new automation rules, whether that's just to make ad hoc changes. These are just 6 simple examples. So what are some other ways to involve the business, and how often are you actually wanting to do this? Well, it depends on who you're talking with. From an executive perspective, let's just park that for a second, how we kind of get buy-in from the executive sponsors to continue these programs, because they will need continuous investment. So the first thing is we typically see that people will be responsible or own data at either a system level or a business domain level. Where we see most of the success is actually when we do it at a domain level, not accounts in Salesforce and accounts in Dynamics and customers in HubSpot. And think of it more from a consolidated perspective of owning per to business domain. And then I would say offer up, 30 minutes a fortnight, short specific updates. Here are the kind of results that we've been able to achieve. This is the overall data quality metrics and how they've gone up over the last few weeks. This is the hourly input that our team has put in, and this is the hourly, this is the ROI that we've received for doing that. I'd say a couple of other things is, make sure you close off every week with a very positive kind of what we've achieved this week, even what we kind of missed out on. That's important as well. But what we do need to do is provide this visibility to leadership and executive sponsors. If we don't, the only time they'll ever hear about it is when inevitably there's something that goes wrong. Like, for example, a particular data set, we weren't able to clean it as much as we wanted, or a particular set of matching records that we thought we would usually capture made its way through to a report. What we want to make sure is that we are sharing both the positive and the parts that need to be done better, but inevitably every project will have those moments. It's important that executives and leadership see the positives as well. So the way that we often would recommend and where we've seen the success is weekly 30-minute sessions. This is with the core team only, shipping wins, celebrating it, thumbs up for everybody, have a great weekend when you get to it, let's dive in next week. On a monthly, this is more where you can start to share your aggregated results across the business. Leadership, sponsors definitely would be part of this as well. How much you've cleaned, how much data quality metrics have gone up, like accuracy and completeness. How many duplicates have you been able to resolve? How many records have been enriched through Dun & Bradstreet? How much of your data correlates nicely with the values that are in these official sources like Dun & Bradstreet? And then on a quarterly, for about 1 hour, you would have this group-wide get-together where you kind of get to talk about what we're going to be doing in the future, how certain parts of the business might already be using this data, and so much more. So as I said, when you're often talking about MDM, there's 4, I guess, notoriously talked about components to it. And there's technology, there's people, there's process, and there's culture. And essentially, from the cultural perspective, I think we've kind of focused on a couple of really important things here, and it's understated how important this is. So celebrate in public, share on newsletters what's been happening. Name people, not tools. So this is not about saying CluedIn is great, other MDM vendor is great. It's about saying Jeff solved this problem this week. That's great. That means we'll be able to do X, Y, and Z as well. So if you were to to get a rough ballpark of what it should look like in a perfect world, if you follow these kind of guidances or playbooks from the CluedIn team, what should it look like within the first 90 days after post-implementation? So first of all, when you're going live, you're going to be part of the team is going to be in the operationals mode in that, a possible match is found using the rules that you've set up. Someone in the line of business is going to either merge those or reject those or augment it in some way. In the meantime, you're probably starting your next use case. So you're learning from, okay, I've already done this once for a different business domain, and then you got to iterate that on from the project team itself. So new matching projects, new rules, new policies, new data, new business domains, etc. So within the first 30 days, you definitely want to, first of all, start some training on what types of messages that these end users will be receiving on these channels like email or Slack or Teams. So introduce them to, hey, right, so in this case, we've got some duplicates coming through. I would expect you to make a decision. What would be your decision? Once you've made it, click the approve. All right, that's the task done. So you'll obviously want some hands-on workshops once you've got this federation in mind. It's really important that you get this set up instead of having, necessarily people learn a new system like CluedIn MDM. That's not really the intention. The intention is we'll come to you. We'll come to where the channels that you're already on. After the first 30 days, from 30 to 60, that's when you're going to want to even start to deploy your second domain, okay? And here is where your iteration cycle is going to come to fruition. This is where we can prove that introducing new domains doesn't introduce a breakdown in the system. And do please make sure that you're letting your AI agents do the majority of the work. The intention of CluedIn is that we don't need you to find the data quality issues. We don't need you to build the validation rules. We don't need you to fill in those missing values. An agent's job is to look at your data, make suggestions, and then learn with the human in the loop from those. That's that iteration cycle that's going to make these agents better and better over time, and that's also where you get the scale as well. In the last 30 days, from 61 to 90, this is just really about being able to measure and see the amount of daily operation work that you should be doing should be getting less and less and less. Please look out for that. And the reason why is As you're working with these agents and approving or rejecting or augmenting what they're suggesting, behind the scenes, CluedIn's building up rules and policies to automate those decisions in the future. So you should essentially be able to see the amount of data quality issues go down and down and down and down over time. And this is happening because your decisions are forming behind the scenes, not just ad hoc changes, they're actually forming rules that will capture those things and know what to do with them in the future if similar kind of data quality issues are done. As I said, you're continuously throughout this process also celebrating the wins, putting them in a report, not only for your weekly, your monthly cadences, but those quarterly sessions where leadership see what is your team doing? What are the value that they're seeing? How quick is it? This is also where if you're showing good value, if you're showing good progress, this is often where we see our customers getting raises in budgets to attack this challenge. There's never going to be a shortage of data quality issues, of new systems, of consolidation issues. And so, of course, the more kind of sponsorship that you can get, this is only going to come from showing wins to the business on these quarterly reports. So, in summary, post-implementation, post-setup, small, frequent wins. Meet people where they are with Federation. Don't ask them to come to you, we go to them. And finally, scale this loop with agents. We have enough experience with our customers now in production to know that often agents can solve a very large portion of the style of issues you need from an MDM and data quality system. Things like knowing that Linden is not a city, that it's most likely London, especially if the country is set as United Kingdom. So it's these types of things that you can scale out with the agents, but there's always a human loop in the loop to be able to be the responsible party to add that accountability to the agent's work. So thank you for your time and good luck with Go Live.